There's a kind of story that stays with you long after the telling, the kind your grandmother might have shared on a summer porch, rocking slow while the fireflies came out. This is one of those. It's about a woman who arrived somewhere with nothing but a silver hairpin and a name written on a letter. It's about what happens when the world laughs at you and what you do next. I've lived long enough to know the measure of a person isn't in what they carry, but in what they refuse to let that go of. So settle in. This one's worth your time. The stagecoach had been gone 10 minutes when Anna realized no one was coming. She stood at the edge of the depot platform, dust still settling on her calico skirt, her single carpet bag at her feet. The letter in her pocket, 3 months of correspondence, promises inked in careful script, felt heavier than the bag itself. Copper Ridge stretched before her, a main street of sun-bleached storefronts, a water trough where a spotted dog lapped lazily, the faded sign of Silas Pritchard's General Goods swinging in the afternoon wind. She walked toward it. The bell above the door jangled. Inside, the smell of coffee beans and tobacco. 3 men at the counter turned. Behind the register, a thick-necked man with a stained apron looked up, squinted, then laughed a short, sharp bark that echoed off the tin ceiling. "Well, well," he said, loud enough for the whole store. "Third mail-order bride this year. Folks," he slapped the counter. "Crane done took your money and ran, sweetheart." 2 weeks ago, Anna's hand moved to the silver pin in her hair. "If this story finds you tonight, we're grateful you're here. From what we can tell, about 60% of folks watching haven't yet subscribed or liked. If you'd be so kind. That little button helps us keep these stories coming. Much obliged. Friends?" The laughter spread like a brush fire. One man near the pickle barrel chuckled. Another leaned against the flour sacks, grinning. A woman by the fabric bolts covered her mouth, but her shoulders shook. Anna's fingers found the silver pin. The metal was warm from her scalp. She pulled it free. Her hair fell loose against her neck, heavy and damp, with 3 weeks of road dust. She set the pin on the counter, pushed it toward Silas. "I need salt," she said. Her voice came out flat, steadier than her hands. "And flour, whatever this is worth." Silas picked up the pin, held it to the light from the window, turned it, squinted, his lips curled. "This." He dropped it back on the wood. "My wife got better from the Sears catalog. Ain't worth a sack of flour, honey." More laughter. The woman by the fabric bolts didn't bother covering her mouth anymore. Anna reached for the pin. Her throat tightened. She would not cry, not here, not in front of a sound. Boot heels on the plank floor. Gistia. Heavy, unhurried. A man stepped out from behind the tall shelf of canned goods, coil of rope in one hand, dust on his shoulders. He was tall, lean through the hips, unshaven. His eyes were pale gray, the color of granite in winter light. He didn't look at Silas. He looked at her. Then he reached into his coat, pulled out something that caught the light, and set it on the counter. The sound it made metal on wood silenced the room. A silver bar, small, dense, stamped with a Wells Fargo seal. "Pack her up," the man said. His voice was low, unhurried. "Salt, flour, beans, bacon, whatever she needs, put it on my account." Silas's mouth opened, closed. His eyes flicked between the bar and the man's face. "Elias, you don't gotta—" "Didn't ask for your opinion." The man, Elias, didn't raise his voice. Just pack the goods. Silas reached for a burlap sack. Anna stood frozen. The pin lay on the counter between them. Forgotten. Her pulse beat in her ears. Elias turned to her, up close. The lines around his eyes were deep, carved by sun and wind. "You know anything about herbs?" he asked. "Rosemary? Sage? That sort of thing?" She opened her mouth. No sound came out. He waited. "My mother kept a garden." The words came out before Anna could stop them. Back in Ohio, Elias nodded once. Good enough. He picked up his coil of rope from where he'd set it on the counter. "Wagon's out front. We leave in 5 minutes." He walked out. The bell above the door jangled behind him. Anna stood there, the silver pin still lying on the counter between her and Silas. The shopkeeper's face had gone the color of old brick. He shoved items into a burlap sack without looking at her tin of salt. Bag of flour, wrapped bacon, dried beans. His movements were quick, angry. She picked up the pin. The metal had gone cold. She slid it back into her hair, fingers trembling as she wound the loose strands into place. "Bag's ready," Silas muttered. He pushed it across the counter. Anna lifted it, heavier than she expected. She walked to the door without looking back, pushed it open, stepped into the afternoon light. The wagon sat at the edge of the street, single horse, chestnut coat, tail flicking at flies. Elias was already on the bench seat, reins loose in his hands. He didn't turn when she approached. Anna climbed up, the bag in her lap. The wooden seat was hard beneath her, worn smooth by years of use. She could smell the horse sweat and hay and something earthy. Elias clicked his tongue. The horse stepped forward. Copper Ridge fell away behind them. The road climbed. Red dirt under the wheels. Stones that made the wagon jolt and creak. Oak trees lined the path, their branches reaching overhead like fingers laced together. The shadows grew longer as the sun dropped toward the ridgeline. Anna watched the country unfold. Rolling hills, dry grass the color of wheat. The occasional flash of a creek bed, mostly rock now, just a thin trickle of water catching the light. Different from Ohio, harsher. The land didn't care if you lived or died. She glanced at Elias. His profile was sharp against the sky-long nose. Stubbled jaw, the brim of his hat pulled low. He hadn't spoken since they left town. The silence pressed against her ears. She counted the rhythm of the horse's hooves. Tried to think of nothing. Failed. "Why'd you help me back there?" The words hung in the air between them. Elias didn't answer. The wagon wheels ground against stone. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermals. Anna waited. The silence stretched so long she thought he hadn't heard, or had chosen not to answer. Then that laugh of his. Elias's voice was low, rough at the edges. "Heard it too many times." Anna turned that over in her mind. "You don't even know me." "Nope." He kept his eyes on the road. "Reckon I don't need to." The wagon crested a small rise. Below, the road curved through a stand of pine, then opened into a valley that climbed toward the mountains. The light was changing, now gold bleeding into orange. The shadows growing teeth. Anna's hands tightened on the burlap sack. She could feel the shape of the salt tin through the rough fabric. Everything she owned was in this wagon. A carpet bag with 2 dresses, a hairbrush, her mother's pin. That was the sum of Anna Colton's life, right here on this wagon bench beside a stranger. She didn't ask any more questions. The road wound higher, The oaks gave way to pine, the air growing cooler, sharper with the scent of resin. They crossed a shallow creek, the horses' hooves splashing through the ankle-deep water, the wagon wheels sending up small sprays that caught the dying light. Then the trees opened, and Anna saw it. A two-story house built of pine logs, weathered to gray, brick chimney rising from the roof, a thread of no smoke, barn to the left, doors hanging open, and in front of the house, spreading down the slope toward them, a garden. Or what had been a garden. The wagon rolled to a stop. Anna climbed down, her boots hitting hard-packed dirt. She walked toward the garden without thinking, drawn by something she couldn't name. The beds were still there, neat rectangular plots, edged with stones that someone had placed with care. But the plants were dying. Rosemary gone woody and brown, sage collapsed in on itself, chamomile choked with weeds, only a few white flowers still clinging to life. Someone had loved this garden once. She could see it in the careful spacing. The way the beds were oriented to catch the morning sun. Someone had knelt in this dirt, pulled these weeds, watered these plants, and then stopped. A bark made her turn. A dog was trotting toward them from the barn, old, gray around the muzzle, black and white coat matted in places. It went straight to Elias, tail wagging slow. "Shep," Elias said, scratching behind the dog's ears. "Good boy." He lifted Anna's carpet bag from the wagon, carried it toward the house. Anna followed, her eyes moving over everything, the porch with its two rocking chairs, the windows dark and dusty, the front door that needed paint. Inside, the air smelled of wood smoke and dust, and something faintly sweet, like dried flowers. The main room was simple stone fireplace, table with two chairs, a kitchen area with a cast-iron stove, clean but neglected, like a place someone lived in without really living. Elias led her down a short hallway. He stopped at a door on the right, pushed it open. "This is yours." Anna stepped inside. A small room, iron bed frame with a faded green wool blanket, nightstand with a kerosene lamp, one window that looked out over the dying garden. "Privy's out back," Elias said. "Pump's by the kitchen. I eat at 6, breakfast at dawn. You work. I pay. Nothing more, nothing less." He met her eyes for the first time since the general store. "We clear." "Clear," Anna said. He nodded, turned to go. "Mister," she caught herself. "Elias." He stopped in the doorway. "Thank you." He stood there a moment, his back to her. Then, "Don't thank me yet. Garden's half dead and I ain't got patience for excuses." He walked away. His boots echoed on the wooden floor. Anna set her carpet bag on the bed. Her hands were shaking from exhaustion, from the strangeness of it all, from something she couldn't name. She crossed to the window, looked out at the garden below. The last light was fading, the sky turning from orange to purple to deep blue. She could do this. She had to do this. There was nowhere else to go. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Anna turned, expecting Elias, but the hallway was empty, just shadows and the last gray light from a window at the far end. And at that end, a door, closed, different from the others somehow. The wood was darker, the frame slightly warped as if it hadn't been opened in a long time. Elias had glanced at that door when they passed. Just a flicker, quick and guarded. Anna stared at it now, alone in the gathering dark. What was behind it? Anna awoke before dawn. The room was cold, the wool blanket rough against her chin. Gray light seeped through the window. Outside, a bird called once, twice, then fell silent. She lay still, listening. The house creaked around her, wood settling. The soft tick of something cooling or warming in the walls. No footsteps, no voices, just the silence of a place that had forgotten what company sounded like. She pushed back the blanket and swung her legs over the side of the bed. The floor was ice against her bare feet. She dressed quickly, the same calico dress, worn soft at the elbows, and found a brown canvas apron hanging on a nail behind the kitchen door. The ties were frayed, the fabric stained with old dirt. Someone else's apron. Someone who wasn't here anymore. Anna tied it around her waist and stepped outside. The garden looked worse in the dawn light. What she'd seen last night as neglect now showed itself as near death. The rosemary bushes were skeletal, their needles brown and brittle. The sage had collapsed inward, gray-green leaves curled and dry. Weeds had claimed entire beds, thistle, and wild grass, pushing up through what had once been careful rows. But the bones were good. Anna walked the perimeter slowly, studying the layout. Whoever had planned this garden knew what they were doing. The beds ran east to west, angled to catch the morning sun. The chamomile was planted near the house, where it would get afternoon shade. The mint was set apart, contained by a border of flat stone. Someone had known it would spread if given the chance. Anna knelt at the edge of the rosemary bed. The soil was hard, cracked from weeks without water. She dug her fingers in, pushing past the dry crust, feeling for what lay beneath. The dirt grew cooler as she went deeper, damper. She found a root thick, pale, still firm. She followed it down, scraping away soil with her fingernails, until she reached a point where new growth was trying to push through, a tiny green nub, no bigger than her thumbnail. Still alive, Dee sat back on her heels, dirt under her nails, a smear of it on her cheek where she'd pushed her hair back. The sun was cresting the ridge now, spilling gold across the valley. The air smelled of pine and dry grass, and something else, something green and sharp, that came from the chamomile, still clinging to life despite everything. The well was behind the house. Anna found a wooden bucket beside it, the rope worn smooth from years of use. She dropped the bucket down, heard the splash, felt the weight as it filled. The pulley creaked as she hauled it up, the rope rough against her palms. She carried the bucket to the garden. The water sloshed against her leg, soaking through her skirt. She didn't care. She knelt at the first rosemary bush and poured slowly, watching the water disappear into the cracked earth, darkening the soil, seeping down toward those pale roots waiting below. One bucket, back to the well. Another bucket, back to the garden. The sun climbed higher. Sweat gathered at her temples, ran down the back of her neck. Her shoulders began to ache. The rope left red marks on her palms that would turn to blisters by evening. She kept going. By late afternoon, she had watered every bed. The soil was dark now, soft enough to work. She found a rusted trowel in the barn and started on the weeds, pulling thistle by the roots, yanking wild grass from between the herb plants, clearing space for the survivors to breathe. Her back screamed, her knees were raw from kneeling on stones. The blisters on her palms had broken open, stinging each time she gripped the trowel handle, but she kept working, kept pulling, kept clearing. Elias walked past around 4 o'clock. He had a hoe over his shoulder, heading toward a fenced area beyond the barn. He slowed when he reached the garden, stopped at the edge. His eyes moved over the beds, the dark soil, the cleared weeds, Anna on her knees with dirt to her elbows. He didn't speak, just stood there for a long moment, watching. Then he shifted the hoe on his shoulder and walked on. Anna went back to work. The day passed in a rhythm of water and weeding, hauling and kneeling. By the time the sun touched the ridge, her whole body was one long ache from neck to heel. Her hands were raw, the skin cracked and stinging. But the garden looked different. The beds were clear. The soil was wet. The plants that remained, and there were more than she'd expected, had room to grow. She washed at the pump behind the house, the water cold enough to make her gasp. The kitchen was dim and quiet. She found beans in a tin, bacon wrapped in paper, an onion going soft in a basket by the stove. She lit the fire, set the cast iron pot over the flame, and started to cook. The stew was bubbling when Elias came in. He hung his hat by the door, pumped water into a tin basin, washed his hands and face. Droplets clung to his stubble. He dried off with a rag that had seen better days and sat down at the table without a word. Anna ladled stew into 2 tin bowls, set one in front of him, sat down across the table with her own. They ate in silence. The only sounds were the scrape of spoons against tin, the crackle of the fire, Shep's breathing from his spot by the hearth. Elias finished his bowl, reached for the pot, ladled more into his bowl, then without looking at her, added a piece of bacon to her bowl from the pot. Anna looked at the bacon, looked at him. He was already eating again, eyes on his food. "The rosemary's still alive," she said. "Roots are good. Give me a few months. I can bring it back." "Suit yourself." More silence. The fire popped. Shep's tail thumped once against the floor. "Doc Harmon," Elias said. "Town doctor. He buys herbs from me, rosemary, chamomile, sage, whatever I can grow." He scraped his spoon against the bottom of his bowl. "Used to be a decent business. Before." Anna waited. He didn't explain what before meant. She didn't ask. "Silas runs supplies up through the pass every few weeks." Elias continued. "Cheaper than hauling my own wagon down. He comes by, drops off what I need, picks up the dried herbs for Doc Harmon." Anna's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "Silas, just so you know," Elias pushed back from the table, "in case you see him around." He carried his bowl to the basin, dropped it in with a clatter, and walked out the back door. The screen banged shut behind him. Anna sat alone at the table. The fire had burned down to embers, casting long shadows across the room. Through the window, she could see the garden, her garden now. At least for a while, dark shapes against the darkening sky. Silas would come here, to this house, to this farm, where she was trying to build something new. She washed the bowls slowly, methodically, her hands moving through the motions while her mind turned elsewhere. The water was cold. Her reflection rippled in the basin, a tired woman with dirt on her face and blisters on her palms. When she finished, she dried her hands and walked down the hallway toward her room. The house was quiet. Elias had gone somewhere, the barn, maybe, or out to check on something in the failing light. She passed the closed door at the end of the hall. Tonight, it seemed different. A thin line of lighter wood showed at the bottom edge, where years of footsteps had worn away the stain. Someone had walked to this door many times, stood here, maybe pressed a hand against the wood. The way Anna found herself doing now, the wood was cool under her palm, smooth. She could smell something faint lavender. Maybe, or something like it. Old and dry, trapped behind the door like a ghost. Her hand moved to the knob. It turned. The knob turned, but Anna didn't push. She stood there in the dark hallway, her palm pressed against the wood, her heart beating in her throat. The lavender smell drifted through the crack, faint, old, like something pressed between the pages of a book years ago. She let go, stepped back. The knob clicked softly as it returned to its resting position. Not tonight. Not yet. She walked to her room, closed the door behind her, and lay awake until the first gray light touched the window. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Anna rose before dawn, dressed in the dark, and went to the garden. She hauled water until her shoulders burned. She pulled out weeds until her fingers bled. She talked to the plants the way her mother had taught her soft words. Nonsense, really, but it felt right. The rosemary responded first, new growth pushing up from the woody stems, then the sage, unfurling pale green leaves toward the morning sun. The chamomile came back strongest of all, white flowers dotting the beds like scattered coins. Elias kept his distance. He worked the land beyond the barn, mending fences, tending to the horse, doing whatever solitary work occupied men who lived alone. They ate together twice a day, breakfast and supper, but the meals passed mostly in silence. A word here, a grunt there. Pass the salt. More coffee. Nothing more. But Anna noticed things. She noticed how he paused at the garden's edge each morning, his eyes moving over the beds before he walked on. She noticed how the portions on her plate grew larger. Though she never asked for more, she noticed how he left a jar of salve on the kitchen table one morning, said nothing about it. Didn't even look at her, but her cracked hands healed within a week. The closed door stayed closed. Anna walked past it every day, felt the pull of it, but kept walking. The summer stretched on, 2 months, then 3. The garden transformed. What had been brown and dying was now green and thriving, the herbs growing thick and fragrant in the late summer heat. Anna harvested the first batch of rosemary on a Tuesday morning, cutting the stems with a knife Elias had sharpened for her the night before. She tied them in bundles with twine and hung them from the rafters in the barn to dry. The smell filled the space, sharp, clean, alive. She was cleaning the house when it happened. Not the garden work this time, but inside work, sweeping the floors, wiping down the windows, trying to push back against the layer of neglect that had settled over everything. She worked her way down the hallway, broom in hand, dust rising in the shafts of afternoon light. The door was ajar. Anna stopped. She was certain she hadn't touched it, certain the wind hadn't blown it open. There was no wind today. The air outside still as held breath. But there it was, open just a crack, just enough for that faint lavender smell to seep through. She pushed it with her fingertips. The hinges groaned. The room was smaller than she'd expected. A bed against the far wall, covered with a quilt that had once been blue, faded now. The colors washed to gray. Lace curtains hung at the window, yellowed with age, filtering the light into something soft and sad. A wardrobe stood in the corner, doors closed, and against the wall beneath the window a vanity. Anna stepped inside. Dust covered everything. It lay thick on the quilt, on the floor, on the small table beside the bed where a Bible sat with a ribbon marking a page. The air was close, stale, heavy with the smell of dried lavender. and something else absence. The particular emptiness of a room that had been sealed against time. She crossed to the vanity. A mirror in an oak frame, the glass clouded with age, an ivory comb, teeth yellowed, a few strands of dark hair still caught between them, a porcelain powder box, lid askew, and there, beside the box, catching the thin light from the window, a silver hairpin. Anna's breath caught. It wasn't the same as hers. The design was different, a flower she didn't recognize, something with 5 petals, delicate and detailed. But the size was the same. The weight would be the same, the way it would feel sliding into a woman's hair. She reached for it. Her fingers hovered an inch away, trembling. The floorboard creaked behind her. Anna spun around. Elias stood in the doorway. His shoulder leaned against the frame, his arms crossed over his chest. He wasn't looking at her. His eyes were fixed on the hairpin, on the vanity, on all the things that had sat undisturbed for years. "I'm sorry," Anna said. The words came out in a rush. The door was open. "I didn't mean to." Door wasn't locked. His voice was flat. Not angry. Not anything. Really. Just flat. Like a pond with no wind. Anna stepped back from the vanity. "I'll go. I shouldn't have." Her name was Sarah. Anna stopped. Elias hadn't moved. He was still looking at the vanity, at the hairpin, at the powder box with its crooked lid. 3 years come October. His jaw worked, the muscles tensing beneath his stubble. Fever took her. Started with a cough, ended with... He stopped, swallowed, ended. Anna stood very still. The dust motes drifted between them, suspended in the light. "She planted that garden," Elias said. "Every bed, every row. Used to spend hours out there, talking to the plants like they could hear her." A sound came from his throat. Not quite a laugh, not quite anything else. "Thought she was crazy at first. Then I got used to it. Then I..." He stopped again. The silence stretched out, filling the room, pressing against the walls. "She had good taste," Anna said quietly. "The lace on those curtains, someone who knew what they were doing made those. Her mother. Wedding gift." "How long were you married?" 4 years. Would have been 5 that November." Anna looked at the Bible on the bedside table. The ribbon marking the page was frayed at the edges, the fabric worn thin from being touched. "I haven't been in here," Elias said. "Not since we buried her. Couldn't. Just couldn't." Anna nodded. She understood that. She understood how a room could become a tomb, how closing a door could feel like the only way to survive. "The hairpin," she said. "It's beautiful." Elias finally looked at her. His eyes were red-rimmed but dry. If he had tears left for Sarah, he wasn't showing them now. "She wore it every Sunday," he said. "Church days. Said it made her feel pretty." She was right. Something shifted in his face. Not a smile, nothing that simple, but something that had been locked tight, loosened just a fraction. "Do what you want with the room," he said. He pushed off from the doorframe, turned to go. "She ain't coming back. I won't go in again. Not if you don't want me to." Elias paused at the threshold. He didn't turn around. "Might be time," he said, his voice rough. "Might be time someone did." He walked away, His boots echoed down the hallway, then faded. Anna stood alone in Sarah's room. The light was changing, the sun dropping toward the ridge, shadows lengthening across the faded quilt. She looked at the hairpin one more time, that small silver thing that had meant so much to a woman she'd never meet. Then she turned and walked out, leaving the door open behind her. That night, they ate supper in their usual silence, but something had shifted. The air between them felt different, not warm. Exactly, but less cold, less careful. After the meal, Elias spoke without looking up from his plate. Market day next week. Doc Harmon's been asking about chamomile. He scraped his spoon against the tin. Could use help at the stall, if you're willing. Anna's hands stilled on her bowl. Market day. The town, the stall. Silas would see her there. The morning of market day, Anna stood in front of the small mirror in her room and studied her reflection. The calico dress was clean. She'd washed it 2 days ago. Hung it on the line behind the house, pressed it with the heavy iron she'd found in the kitchen. The fabric was still worn at the elbows, still patched at the hem. But it was clean. That was something. Her fingers found the silver hairpin on the nightstand. Her mother's pin. The lily design caught the early light, tarnished but still beautiful. She wound her hair up, slid the pin into place, and looked at herself again. The woman in the mirror looked older than she remembered. Thinner, too, but stronger somehow. Her arms had definition they'd never had before. Muscles built from hauling water and turning soil. Her hands were rough, the calluses thick, the skin brown from months in the sun. She didn't look like the woman who'd stepped off that stagecoach. She didn't feel like her either. Wagon's ready. Elias's voice came from the front of the house. Anna took one last look at the mirror, then walked out to meet him. The wagon was loaded with crates, dried herbs, bundled and tied with twine. Each bundle labeled in Anna's careful handwriting. Rosemary, sage, chamomile, mint. The smell rose from the wagon bed, sharp and green and alive. Anna climbed up onto the bench seat. Her stomach was tight, her palms damp against her skirt. She kept her eyes forward as Elias clicked his tongue, and the horse started down the road. The ride to town took an hour. Anna spent most of it not talking, watching the country roll past, trying not to think about the general store and the sound of laughter echoing off the tin ceiling. Copper Ridge appeared around a bend in the road, the same sun-bleached buildings, the same dusty street, the same sign swinging above Silas Pritchard's General Goods. Anna's hands tightened in her lap. The market was set up in the square at the center of town. Wagons lined the edges, their owners standing behind makeshift stalls, planks laid across barrels, crates stacked to display goods. Anna saw vegetables, eggs, fresh bread, jars of preserves, bolts of fabric. The air smelled of dust and horse manure and something sweet baking somewhere nearby. Elias pulled the wagon into an empty spot near the water trough. He climbed down, started unloading the crates, setting up the stall with practiced efficiency. Anna helped, her movements mechanical, her eyes darting toward the general store at the corner of the square. Silas wasn't outside. The store's windows reflected the morning sun, impossible to see through. Here, Elias set the last crate on the plank table. The herb bundles were arranged in neat rows, now green and fragrant, tied with brown twine, the labels facing outward. He stepped back, looked at the display, then at Anna. "You know the prices," he said. I'll be at the feed store if you need me." He walked away before she could respond. Anna stood alone behind the stall. The square was filling up now, women with baskets over their arms, men in work clothes, children darting between the wagons. Voices rose and fell. Laughter mixed with the clatter of wheels and the braying of a mule somewhere down the street. No one approached her stall. Anna straightened the bundles that didn't need straightening. She adjusted the labels. She wiped dust from the plank table with her palm. Her heart beat too fast, her breath coming shallow in her chest. From the corner of her eye, she saw the general store door open. She didn't look. She kept her eyes on the herbs, on the table, on anything but that door and whoever might be walking out of it. Footsteps approached. Anna's hands went still. "You're the one tending Elias's garden now." The voice was female, older, with a rasp of tobacco or age or both. Anna looked up. A woman stood in front of the stall, 60, maybe older, with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that missed nothing. She wore a dress of good quality, not fancy, but well made, and carried herself with the particular authority of someone used to being listened to. "Yes, ma'am," Anna said. The woman reached for a bundle of rosemary, lifted it to her nose, inhaled deeply, her eyes closing for a moment. "Well, I'll be—" She opened her eyes, looked at Anna, then turned and spoke loudly, loud enough for the three women at the next stall to hear, loud enough for the man walking past with a sack of flour to hear. "Best rosemary I've seen in this town. Doc's gonna be pleased." Anna blinked. "Thank you, ma'am." "Mrs. Harmon." The woman set the rosemary on the table and pointed at the chamomile. "I'll take 2 bundles of that, 3 of the rosemary, and—" She squinted at the sage, "1 of those. My husband goes through herbs like water. Says the rosemary oil is the only thing that works on Mr. Peterson's joints." Anna gathered the bundles, her hands steadier now. She told Mrs. Harmon the price. The numbers came out clear, confident. Like she'd done this 100 times. Mrs. Harmon counted out coins from a small purse and dropped them into Anna's palm. The metal was warm from the woman's hand. "You're the one Crane left at the station," Mrs. Harmon said. It wasn't a question. Anna's fingers closed around the coins. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Harmon tucked the herbs into her basket. Man was a snake. Everyone knew it except the women who answered his letters. "You're better off." She walked away without waiting for a response. Anna stood there, the coins in her fist, something loosening in her chest. More customers came after that. A young woman with a baby on her hip bought mint for tea. An older man with a pronounced limp asked about the chamomile and its uses. A farmer's wife bought sage and rosemary and asked if Anna would have lavender next month. "Might," Anna said. "The plants are coming back. We'll see." Between customers, an old woman approached. White hair, face like crumpled paper, but eyes that were sharp and bright. She picked up a bundle of mint, turned it over in her gnarled hands. "You know anything about growing this?" she asked. "Mine keeps dying. Too much sun, probably." Anna said, "Mint likes shade and wet feet." "Huh." The old woman, Martha. Someone had called her, squinted at the bundle. "My Henry always said full sun." "With respect, ma'am. Your Henry was wrong." Martha's mouth opened, closed. Then she laughed, a short, sharp bark that turned into a wheeze. "Well," she said, pulling coins from her apron pocket. "Ain't that something? A woman who speaks her mind." She dropped the coins on the table. "I'll take 2 bundles, and I'll be back next month to tell you if you were right." "I'll be here." Martha walked away, still chuckling. Anna counted the coins in the small cloth bag she'd brought for the purpose. More than she'd expected. Enough to matter. Enough to prove she could do something besides take up space and accept charity. The sun was high now, the morning crowd thinning. Anna was reaching for her water flask when she saw him. Silas stood at the edge of the square, arms crossed over his chest, watching her stall. He was too far away for her to read his expression, but she could feel his eyes on her, heavy, measuring. He started walking toward her. Anna's hand tightened on the flask. Her throat went dry. The coins in the bag suddenly weighed nothing at all, meaningless against the memory of his laughter, the way he'd dropped her mother's pin on the counter like it was trash. Silas was 10 feet away now. 8, 5. He opened his mouth to speak. A hand came down on the edge of the stall. Elias. He'd appeared from somewhere at the feed store, maybe, or somewhere else, and now he stood beside Anna, his palm flat on the plank table, his body angled toward Silas. He didn't say anything, didn't threaten, didn't posture. He just stood there, looking at Silas with those pale gray eyes, waiting. Silas's mouth closed. The two men looked at each other for a long moment. Something passed between them, something Anna couldn't read, couldn't interpret. Some history or understanding that existed outside of words. Then Silas turned and walked away. Anna let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Elias watched Silas go, his hand still on the table. When the shopkeeper disappeared into his store, Elias straightened, rolled his shoulders, and looked at the herb bundles. Sold much? Enough, Anna said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Good. He picked up an empty crate, set it in the wagon bed. Pack up. We're done here. The ride home was quiet, but different from the ride in. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, it was just silence. Comfortable. The kind that didn't need filling. Anna sat with the cloth bag of coins in her lap, feeling their weight, their reality. She had earned this, not been given it, earned it. The farm appeared around the last bend. The house and barn and garden spread out against the ridge. Anna looked at it differently now. Not as a place she'd ended up, but as a place she might belong. Elias pulled the wagon to a stop near the barn. Anna climbed down, the coin bag tucked into her apron pocket. Elias. He paused, one foot on the ground, one still in the wagon. Thank you, she said, for what you did back there, with Silas. He looked at her for a moment, then he shook his head. Didn't do anything. He climbed down, started unhitching the horse, just stood there. That was enough. He didn't respond, but as he led the horse toward the barn, Anna thought she saw something at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, but close. She was walking toward the house when Shep started barking. The dog was at the edge of the property, near the road that led down through the pass. His bark was sharp, urgent, different from his usual greeting. Anna stopped, listened. Hoofbeats. Coming up the road, fast, Elias emerged from the barn, his eyes on the dog, then on the road. A rider appeared around the bend, a young man on a lathered horse, riding hard. He pulled up when he saw them, the horse dancing and blowing. Mr. Stone. The rider was out of breath, his face red with exertion. You, Elias Stone. I am. Doc Harmon sent me. The rider swallowed, steadied himself. There's been an accident. Up at Miller's Pass. A wagon went over. Anna's stomach dropped. Who? Elias asked. The rider looked from Elias to Anna and back again. Silas Pritchard, he said. He's hurt bad. They left him by the road. The rider's words hung in the air like smoke. Where Elias's voice was sharp, cutting. Miller's Pass, about 2 miles up the canyon road. The rider wiped sweat from his face with a dirty sleeve. Bandits hit his wagon, took everything, spooked the horse. Wagon flipped. Doc's on his way from town, but he shook his head. Road's rough in the dark. Figured someone closer might get there first. Elias was already moving toward the barn. Anna, get the lantern. The big one. By the kitchen door. And grab whatever clean cloth you can find. Anna's legs didn't move. Silas, the man who'd laughed at her. The man who'd dropped her mother's pin on the counter like garbage. The man who'd called her honey and sweetheart while a room full of strangers watched her humiliation. That man was lying in the dirt somewhere, bleeding. Anna! Elias's voice snapped her back. He was standing at the barn door, watching her. Now, he said, move. She moved. The storm lantern was where he'd said heavy, brass. The glass chimney smudged with soot. She grabbed it, then ran to her room, pulled the sheet from the bed, bundled it under her arm. Her shawl hung on the hook by the door. She threw it over her shoulders as she ran back outside. Elias had the horse saddled, not the wagon horse, but a bay mare Anna had seen in the back paddock. He swung up, reached down a hand. Behind me. Hold on. Anna grabbed his hand. His grip was iron, hauling her up onto the horse's back in one motion. She wrapped her arms around his waist, the lantern banging against her thigh, the bundled sheet pressed between them. Elias kicked the mare into motion. They rode hard through the gathering dark. The sun had dropped below the ridge, leaving only a thin line of orange on the horizon. Shadows pooled in the hollows, spread across the road like spilled ink. The mare's hooves pounded against the packed earth, throwing up clods of dirt that stung Anna's face and arms. The canyon road climbed steeply, winding between walls of rock that rose on either side like the ribs of some ancient beast. Anna could smell pine resin and dust and the sharp tang of the horse's sweat. Her thighs ached from gripping the mare's flanks. Her arms burned from holding on to Elias. The ride took longer than Anna expected. The trail was treacherous in the failing light. The mare picking her way carefully over loose stones and sudden drops. By the time they rounded the final bend, full dark had fallen. Elias pulled up hard. The wagon lay on its side in the middle of the road, one wheel still spinning slowly, creaking with each rotation. Crates had spilled across the dirt, broken open, contents scattered. Flour made white streaks on the dark ground. A barrel had cracked, spilling something dark that might have been molasses. And beside the wagon, half hidden in shadow, a body. Elias dismounted, took the lantern from Anna, struck a match. The wick caught. Throwing a circle of yellow light across the scene, Anna slid down from the horse. Her legs nearly buckled when they hit the ground. She steadied herself against the mare's flank, then forced herself to walk toward the body. Silas lay on his back, one leg twisted at a wrong angle beneath the overturned cargo box. His face was covered in dirt and scratches. Blood crusted at his hairline. His chest rose and fell in shallow, rapid breaths. Anna stopped 3 feet away. The lantern light fell across his face. He looked smaller than she remembered, smaller and older. The flesh of his cheeks slack, his lips cracked and pale. His eyes were closed, the lids fluttering. This was the man who had humiliated her. This was the man who had made her feel smaller than the dirt beneath his boots. Anna's hands curled into fists at her sides. Your call. Elias's voice came from behind her, flat and even. Anna turned. He stood by the wagon wheel, the lantern held low, his face half in shadow. He wasn't looking at Silas. He was looking at her. What ain't my enemy lying there? Elias shifted the lantern to his other hand. Your call. Anna stared at him. The night wind cut through the canyon, cold against her sweat-damp skin. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl called once and fell silent. She looked back at Silas, at his pale face, his rapid breathing, the blood drying on his forehead. She could walk away, climb back on that horse and ride home and never think about Silas Pritchard again. Leave him here for Doc Harmon to find or not find. Leave him to whatever fate the night had in store. It would be justice. It would be fair. Her mother's voice came to her then, unbidden. Not words exactly, but the memory of words. Something about kindness being what you do when no one's watching. Something about mercy being stronger than revenge. Anna's fingers uncurled. She knelt in the dirt beside Silas. The ground was cold and damp beneath her knees. Mud seeped through her skirt, black and thick, soaking into the fabric. She could feel it against her skin, wet, gritty, smelling of earth and rot. She leaned forward, pressed her palm against Silas's forehead. Hot, far too hot. Fever, she said. Her voice sounded strange in her own ears, calm, steady, like someone else was speaking through her mouth. He's burning up. Anna pulled the bundled sheet from under her arm, started tearing it into strips. The fabric resisted at first, then gave way with a ripping sound that echoed off the canyon walls. Help me get him out from under there, she said. Elias set the lantern on a flat rock and moved to the cargo box. He braced his shoulder against it, pushed. The veins in his neck stood out, his boots digging into the mud for purchase. The box shifted. Silas groaned a low animal sound that made Anna's stomach clench. Again, she said. Elias pushed. The box scraped against the ground, moved another inch. Anna grabbed Silas's shoulders, pulled him toward her as the weight lifted from his leg. He slid through the mud, his body limp and heavy. Anna's arms screamed with the effort. Her hand slipped on his sweat-soaked shirt. She fell backward. Silas's upper body landing across her lap. Mud splashing up into her face, her hair, her mouth. She spat, wiped her eyes with a muddy hand, which only made it worse. She could taste dirt on her tongue, feel it grinding between her teeth. But Silas was free. His leg was bad swollen, the fabric of his trousers torn, a deep gash running from knee to ankle. Not broken, Anna thought, but close. She pressed a strip of sheet against the wound. Blood soaked through immediately, warm and wet against her fingers. Hold this, she told Elias. He knelt beside her, pressed his palm over the makeshift bandage. Anna worked quickly. Another strip around the leg, tied tight. Another for the wound on his forehead, where the blood had started flowing again. Her hands moved without thought, guided by instinct and the faded memory of her mother's teachings. Silas's eyes fluttered open. He looked up at her, at her mud-streaked face, her tangled hair, her hands covered in his blood. His mouth moved, trying to form words. Don't talk, Anna said. Save your strength. But Silas kept looking at her. His eyes were glassy with fever, unfocused. But something in them shifted recognition, maybe, or confusion. His cracked lips parted. You, he whispered. His voice was barely audible over the wind. You're the... I know who I am. Anna cut him off. Her voice came out harder than she intended. And I know who you are. Now be quiet. She looked at Elias over Silas's prone body. We need to get him back to the house. He won't make it if we leave him here for Doc Harmon. Elias studied her face in the lantern light. His expression was unreadable, not surprised, not impressed. Just watching, taking her measure. Then he nodded. I'll bring the horse closer. You keep pressure on that leg. He stood and walked into the darkness beyond the lantern's reach. Anna sat in the mud, Silas's head in her lap, his blood on her hands. The wind cut through the canyon, carrying the smell of pine and coming rain. Above her, the first stars were appearing, cold and distant. She looked down at Silas's face, the face of the man who had mocked her, reduced her to nothing in front of a room full of strangers. His eyes had closed again. His breathing was shallow but steady. The fever burned beneath her palm where it rested on his forehead. She had saved him. Now she had to keep him alive. But as she sat there in the mud and the dark, a different thought crept in, cold and unwelcome. What would Silas say when he woke up and realized who had rescued him? The first night was the worst. They carried Silas into the house on a makeshift stretcher, 2 fence posts with a blanket stretched between them. His body was dead weight, his head lolling to one side, his breathing rapid and shallow. Anna directed them to the small room at the end of the hall, not Sarah's room, but a storage space they cleared in minutes, shoving crates against the walls, laying blankets on the narrow cot that had been buried under old horsetack. Silas didn't wake when they laid him down. His skin was the color of candle wax, sheened with sweat. The bandage on his leg had soaked through during the ride, the white fabric now rust-brown with dried blood. Anna cut away his trousers with a kitchen knife. The wound beneath was ugly, jagged edges, dirt ground into the flesh, the beginning of infection already visible in the red streaks radiating from the gash. She cleaned it with water boiled on the stove, her hands steady even as her stomach turned. She packed the wound with chamomile paste, something her mother had taught her years ago, in another life, and wrapped it tight with fresh cloth. The fever climbed through the night. Anna sat beside the cot, a basin of cool water at her feet, wringing out cloths and laying them across Silas's forehead. His body shook with chills, even as heat poured off him in waves. He muttered in his delirium fragments of words, names she didn't recognize, pleas that made no sense. Around midnight, Elias appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Anna, settled into the chair in the corner. You should rest, he said. I can watch him for a spell. Not yet. He didn't argue, just sat there, the coffee warming his hands, his eyes on the sick man in the bed. They traded shifts after that. Anna would sleep for a few hours in the chair while Elias kept watch, then take over when he needed to tend the animals or catch some rest himself. The rhythm was exhausting, but necessary. Neither of them could keep going without some sleep, and Silas needed constant attention. The second day brought no change. Anna worked mechanically, her body moving through tasks her mind barely registered. Change the bandages. Check the wound. Wipe the sweat. Try to get water past his cracked lips. Most of it dribbled down his chin, soaking into the pillow. She found the medical book in her carpet bag, Domestic Medicine, by William Buchan, her mother's copy. The margins filled with handwritten notes in faded ink. She read the section on fever 3 times, searching for something she might have missed. The words blurred together. Her eyes burned. She kept reading. That night, Elias brought soup instead of coffee. He sat in the same chair, in the same position, watching her work. "You need to eat," he said. "Won't do him any good if you collapse." Anna took the bowl. The soup was warm, salty, good. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first spoonful hit her stomach. Elias was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Sarah used to sing when she cooked." Anna looked up. Elias wasn't looking at her. His eyes were fixed on some point in the middle distance, somewhere beyond the walls of the small room. "Couldn't carry a tune worth anything," he continued. "Hymns, mostly. Amazing Grace. But and over till I thought I'd go crazy." A sound came from his throat, not quite a laugh. "Miss it now, Gardo." Anna set the spoon in the bowl. "Tell me about her." And he did. He talked about how they'd met at a church social, her in a blue dress, him too nervous to ask her to dance until the last song of the night. He talked about their wedding, small and simple, just family and a few friends. He talked about the garden, how she'd started it from nothing, just a patch of dirt and a handful of seeds, how she'd spent hours out there talking to the plants like they were children. He talked about the fever that had taken her, how it had started with a cough, then a headache, then a heat that wouldn't break, how he'd sat beside her bed, just like Anna was sitting now, praying to a God he wasn't sure was listening. His voice cracked on the last part. He stopped talking. The silence stretched out, filled only by Silas's ragged breathing. "I'm sorry," Anna said. "Don't be." Elias stood, his joints cracking. "Ain't your burden to carry." He walked out of the room. Anna heard his footsteps fade down the hall, heard the back door open and close. The days blurred together after that. 4, 5, 6, the fever would drop, then spike again. The wound on Silas's leg began to heal, the angry red streaks fading. But the fever held on like a dog with a bone. Anna slept in snatches an hour here, 2 hours there, always with one ear listening for changes in Silas's breathing. Elias took the night shifts when he could, sitting in the corner chair with a cup of cold coffee, watching over the man who had once humiliated the woman sleeping in the next room. On the 10th night, the fever broke. Anna was dozing in the chair when she heard Silas's breathing change, deeper, slower, more regular. She reached out, pressed her palm to his forehead. Cool, not cold, but cool. The fire that had burned beneath his skin for nearly 2 weeks was finally gone. She sat back in her chair, her hands trembling. Exhaustion crashed over her like a wave sudden, overwhelming. She let her eyes close, just for a moment. When she opened them again, morning light was streaming through the window, and Silas was awake. His eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling. His breathing was slow and even now. The fever flush faded from his cheeks. He looked smaller than she remembered, deflated somehow, like a balloon that had lost its air. Anna straightened in her chair. Her back screamed in protest, her neck stiff from sleeping at an awkward angle. She reached for the water cup on the nightstand. Silas turned his head. Their eyes met. Anna watched the recognition dawn, the confusion first, then the slow assembly of memory, then the understanding. His gaze moved from her face to her hands, still rough, still callous to the bandages on his leg, to the basin of water, to the damp cloths piled beside the bed. His lips parted. "Where?" Elias Stone's farm. Anna's voice came out rough, scratchy from lack of sleep. Miller's Pass. Your wagon flipped. Silas's eyes closed. His throat worked. The Adam's apple bobbing. When he opened his eyes again, they were wet. You, he said. The word came out cracked, broken. You're the one who... Yes. He stared at her. Anna could see it happening, the pieces falling into place, the full weight of it settling over him. The woman he'd mocked, the woman he'd humiliated in front of a room full of people. The woman whose mother's pin he'd called worthless. That woman had spent nearly 2 weeks at his bedside. That woman had cleaned his wounds and cooled his fever and held water to his lips. Something shifted in Silas's face. The lines around his mouth deepened. His jaw clenched, released, clenched again. Why? The word was barely a whisper. Anna thought about the question. She thought about her mother's voice, about kindness and mercy and all the things she'd been taught. She thought about the mud soaking through her skirt, the blood on her hands, the long nights of fighting sleep while this man fought death. I don't know, she said, and it was the truth. Silas turned his face to the wall. His shoulders began to shake. Anna had expected many things: anger, maybe denial, perhaps even gratitude, though she hadn't been counting on it. But she hadn't expected this, hadn't expected the sounds that were coming from him now, not words, not really, but something deeper, something broken. She stood up. Her legs were unsteady beneath her. She picked up the basin of water, the pile of used cloths. She walked to the door and stopped. Why? The question came out before she could stop it. Silas didn't turn around. His voice came out muffled, aimed at the wall. Why, what? In the store, that first day, Anna's fingers tightened on the basin. Why did you laugh? The silence stretched out. Silas's shoulders had stopped shaking. But he still didn't turn. Because I'm a coward, he said finally. His voice was flat, empty. Because it's easier to laugh at someone else's misfortune than face your own. Because his breath cut. Because I've been doing it so long I forgot how to be anything else. Anna stood in the doorway, the basin heavy in her hands. That's not an answer, she said. No. Silas finally turned his head. His face was wet, streaked with tears that had cut clean lines through the grime. It ain't, but it's all I got. Anna looked at him, this man who had been so large in her memory, so cruel, so powerful. He looked small now, diminished, not by her kindness. She realized, by his own shame, by the weight of what he'd done pressing down on him in the quiet hours of recovery. She didn't forgive him. She wasn't sure she ever would, but she understood something now that she hadn't understood before. There's porridge on the stove, she said. I'll bring you some. She walked out before he could respond. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Her whole body was shaking from exhaustion, from emotion, from something she couldn't name. Footsteps approached. Elias appeared at the end of the hall, a cup of coffee in each hand. He's awake, Anna said. I heard. He handed her a cup. The ceramic was warm against her cold fingers. She wrapped both hands around it, breathed in the bitter steam. What now? She asked. Elias looked past her, toward the room where Silas lay. His expression was unreadable. Now, he said, we find out what kind of man he really is. A week passed after Silas woke, then another. He grew stronger each day. The fever stayed gone, the wound on his leg closed, pink new skin forming beneath the bandages. Anna changed every morning. He could sit up by the 5th day, stand with help by the 8th, walk with a crutch Elias fashioned from a hickory branch by the 12th. He didn't speak much, took his meals in silence, eyes on his plate. When Anna brought him water or changed his bandages, he watched her with an expression she couldn't read, something between shame and wonder. Like a man looking at a thing he didn't deserve to see. On the 14th morning, he asked to speak with her. Anna found him sitting on the edge of the cot, fully dressed for the first time since the accident. Someone, Elias, probably had brought him clean clothes from town. The shirt hung loose on his frame. He'd lost weight during the fever. His face was thinner too, the flesh drawn tight across his cheekbones. He had a piece of paper in his hands. "Sit down," he said. "Please." Anna remained standing in the doorway. "I'm fine here." Silas nodded, as if he'd expected that answer. He looked down at the paper, turned it over in his hands. The edges were creased, the surface covered in careful handwriting. "I wrote this last night," he said. His voice was rough, uncertain, nothing like the booming confidence she remembered from the general store. "Took me 4 tries to get the words right. Still not sure I managed it." He held out the paper. Anna didn't move. "It's the deed to half my store," Silas said. "Signed and witnessed, had the sheriff come by yesterday. Make it legal. It's yours, fair and square." The words hung in the air between them. Anna stared at the paper, at the ink, the creases, the trembling in Silas's hand as he held it out. "I don't want your store," she said. Silas's arm dropped. He looked at the deed, then back at her. "Then what do you want? Tell me." "Whatever it is." Anna turned toward the window, through the dusty glass. She could see the garden, her garden now, thick and green and thriving. The chamomile was blooming, white flowers nodding in the morning breeze. The rosemary had grown tall enough to brush against the windowsill of the room where she slept. "I already got what I need," she said. Silas was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. "I don't understand you, woman." "No." Anna turned back to face him. "I don't expect you do." He sat there on the edge of the cot, the deed crumpled in his fist, looking smaller than she'd ever seen him, smaller than the man who'd laughed at her, smaller than the man who'd made her feel worthless. Just a man, old and tired and broken in ways that had nothing to do with his leg. "Why?" he asked. The question seemed torn from somewhere deep inside him. "Why did you save me after everything He stopped, swallowed. "You could have left me there. No one would have blamed you." Anna thought about the question. She thought about the mud soaking through her skirt, the blood on her hands, the long nights sitting beside his bed while fever racked his body. "I didn't save you for you," she said finally. "I saved you for me, so I could look at myself in the mirror and know I wasn't the kind of person who'd leave a man to die just because he was cruel to me once." Silas's eyes closed. His shoulders curled inward. "That's worse," he whispered. "That's so much worse than if you just hated me." Anna didn't argue. She didn't disagree. She walked to the cot and took the crumpled deed from his hand, smoothed it out against her thigh, folded it in half, then in quarters, and held it out to him. "Keep it," she said. Use it to be better. That's payment enough. Silas took the paper. His fingers brushed hers, brief, accidental. He flinched like he'd touched a hot stove. I ain't gonna forget this, he said. His voice cracked on the words. I ain't ever gonna forget. I know. She left him sitting there, the folded deed pressed against his chest, his head bowed. Elias had the wagon ready by noon, the same wagon that had brought her up the mountain all those months ago, the same chestnut horse flicking its tail at flies. But now there was a second seat, a chair taken from the kitchen, cushioned with folded blankets, lashed to the wagon bed with rope. Silas came out of the house slowly, the crutch under his arm, his weight heavy on the makeshift support. He paused at the edge of the porch, looked out at the farm, the house, the barn, the garden spreading down the slope toward the road. Good land, he said. Good people on it. Elias helped him into the wagon, settling him onto the cushioned chair. Neither man spoke. There was nothing left to say, or maybe too much. The words tangled up in history and hurt, and the strange alchemy of mercy. Silas picked up the reins. The horse shifted, eager to move. He looked at Anna. She stood on the porch steps, her arms crossed over her chest, the morning sun warm on her shoulders. That pin of yours, Lass said. The silver one. With the lily. Anna's hand moved involuntarily to her hair, where the pin held her bun in place. It's worth more than I said. Silas's throat worked. A lot more. I knew it when I saw it. Said what I said anyway. He shook his head. Just wanted you to know. Wanted you to know. I knew. Anna nodded once, said nothing. Silas turned back to the horse, clicked his tongue. The wagon lurched forward, wheels crunching on gravel, and rolled down the road toward the pass. Anna watched until it disappeared around the bend, until the sound of hooves faded into silence, until there was nothing left but the wind in the grass and the bees humming in the garden. Elias came to stand beside her. Well, he said. Well, she agreed. They stood like that for a while, not speaking, watching the road where Silas had disappeared. The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning chill. Somewhere in the barn, a sheep barked once and fell silent. Got a question for you, Elias said finally. Anna turned to look at him. He was staring out at the garden, his profile sharp against the bright sky, the lines around his eyes deep from years of squinting against the sun. Ask it. That chamomile. He nodded toward the white flowers bobbing in the breeze. Doc Harmon's been asking for more. Wants to know if we can double the crop next spring. He paused. He said, not you. Anna waited. Elias turned to face her. His eyes were the color of river stones, pale gray, steady, holding hers without flinching. Wondered if that was all right with you, he said. The we part. Anna felt something shift in her chest. Not her heart. Nothing so simple. Something deeper. Something that had been locked tight for a long time, slowly working its way open. Might be, she said. Might be. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. That a yes or a no? That's a might be. Anna looked out at the garden, at the house, at the mountains rising purple in the distance. Ask me again next spring, when the chamomile blooms. Elias nodded slowly. Fair enough. He walked toward the barn, his boots crunching on the gravel path. Halfway there, he stopped and looked back. Good crop this year, he said. Best in years? Told you I could bring it back. You did. He held her gaze for a long moment. Reckon you did? He disappeared into the barn. Anna stood alone on the porch. The sun was high now, the shadows short, the air thick with the smell of herbs and warm earth. She reached up and touched the silver pin in her hair, the lily, tarnished but still beautiful, the last piece of her mother she carried with her. It wasn't worthless. It never had been. She walked down the steps and into the garden. The chamomile brushed against her skirt as she passed, white petals soft as whispers. The rosemary was tall and fragrant, the sage silvery green in the midday light. She knelt in the dirt, the same dirt she'd dug her fingers into on that first morning, searching for signs of life, and pulled a weed from between the mint plants. The soil was dark and rich beneath her hands. Alive. She thought about the woman who'd stepped off that stagecoach, the one with nothing but a carpet big and a broken promise. That woman was gone now, left behind somewhere on the dusty road between Copper Ridge and this place that had become home. The woman kneeling in this garden was someone else, someone stronger, someone who knew her own worth. Not because anyone had told her, but because she'd proven it to herself. One bucket of water at a time, one weed at a time, one long night at a time. Shep wandered over from the barn, his tail wagging slow. He lay down beside her in the dirt, his gray muzzle resting on his paws, eyes half closed in the warmth. Anna scratched behind his ears. The dog sighed. From the barn came the sound of Elias working the ring of a hammer on metal, the low murmur of his voice as he talked to the horse. Ordinary sounds, peaceful sounds, the sounds of home. Anna sat back on her heels, the sun warm on her face, the smell of chamomile rising around her. She looked at the garden she'd brought back from the dead, the house that had opened its doors to her, the mountain standing guard against the sky. She touched the pin in her hair one more time. Then she went back to work. There's a quiet weight that settles after a story like this one. Not heavy, exactly. More like a blanket you didn't know you needed until someone placed it across your shoulders. Many of us have stood where Anna stood, in a room full of laughter that wasn't kind, holding something precious that the world called worthless. Some of us have been Elias, too, keeping a door closed because opening it meant feeling again. And perhaps a few of us have been Silas, carrying the memory of cruelty we wish we could take back, wondering if it's too late to become someone different. These feelings don't need to be resolved tonight. They're allowed to sit with you, unfinished. The way real life often is, not every wound heals clean. Not every question finds its answer. And that's all right. What matters is that you stayed. You listened. You let this strain walk beside you for a while. Thank you for that. Thank you for being here.